Okay, folks, if I can have your attention up front here, we're going to get going here. We're trying to make this an hour-and-a-half program, so we're going to try to speak to a whole bunch of people saying a lot of important things. My name is Skip Delano, and I welcome you out here tonight to this town hall about the VA and privatization. I think many of us here use the VA, and we're proud of it, we love it, and we don't want to see it destroyed by those who try to impose the VA and privatize it. Let me just say a couple things. Tonight is a dialogue. In other words, we have speakers up here who graciously volunteered to talk a little bit about the VA and their special expertise in learning about and studying the VA and working for people and representing people at the VA. And then we've got a number of vets here volunteer to say a word about their own experience at the VA, what they've done or what the VA has meant for them. Suzanne Gordon, Jasper Craven, James Young, and Gabriel Dahle. And they're going to talk a little bit about the VA, and again, from their own perspective. Then in the front here, then you guys just can stand up for a second. Bill Johnson, Joe Hirsch, just stand up for a second so people can see you. Brian Matarese, and Barry, who's not here yet, I don't believe, who works in the Jersey VA, and Kerry Tab. Kerry, somewhere here, there she is. So without delay, Suzanne Gordon.
Thank you. So I'm not a veteran. I'm a healthcare journalist. I've been writing about healthcare, our broken healthcare system, which I go to, and I have the best health insurance you can possibly buy. I will never get healthcare as good, comprehensive, and integrated as a veteran gets when the VA is at its best. I will never experience that. I have to be the coordinator of my own care when I'm sick. When I'm sick, right? When I'm in the hospital, just out of, surgery. If I get if there's a problem with a physician, or, they're not responsive to me, if I called my congressman or senator, they would just kind of laugh, right? And tell me to go to a lawyer, who would also laugh, because if you're hurt, as I was, right, after surgery, you have no recourse except a lawyer, and only 2.6% of actual malpractice cases that are actual malpractice ever get taken to court. I will never get integrated care. My providers don't talk to each other. I've sat in all over this country. I spent 5 years researching VA care. And I didn't just ask providers, doctors, nurses, how it was, and if they said it was great. I was like, oh, I ticked the box. I sat in on psychiatry appointments. I learned mindfulness meditation with 6 Vietnam vets at the San Francisco VA. I sat in on primary care appointments. I watched veterans be taken down the hall by a primary care provider. If they said they were depressed or they didn't understand how to take their meds, they were taken down the hall to a pharmacist or a psychologist. If I say I don't know how to take my meds, which I did one time to a doc, he got mad at me because I was slowing down the line, right? They have 10 minutes to see you. They have patient panels of 3,400 patients. At the VA, the patient panels are 1,100. That's why they can see you for 30 minutes, not 10, right? They have comprehensive integrated care. You say you're having chronic pain, you don't just go to an orthopedist who looks at an x-ray. You go to a pain class. You go to meditation. You go to yoga. I sat in with a group of women in Sacramento, female vets from age 31 to 75, many of whom had military sexual trauma, and they had a special program for them. And they said, they went to their primary provider in the private sector, and they told them, don't do this, don't do that, whatever. And she said to me, don't they get it? We were socialized in the military, right? We were socialized to be tough. No, they don't get it. They don't get it. A friend of mine was a Vietnam vet who had PTSD when he came home from Nam. Went to the VA finally, got help, was okay. How many people are Vietnam vets in the room? Okay, tell me if this is a familiar story. Got treated, got better, you know, had a great business career, had private health care, retired. And what happened? It all came back. Because that's what it does when it has time on its hands. It knocks on your brain. He goes to his primary care provider who didn't even know he was a veteran because he never asked, right? He says he's having nightmares and PTSD, and what does the guy do? He prescribes Ambien, right? Well, I mean, finally my friend went to the VA. But that VA is under attack. The Koch brothers, conservative, they're not even conservative, they're like off the charts. They're ultra-libertarian, anti-democracy. They don't care about veterans. They don't even care about the VA. They're not in healthcare, they're in energy. But if you read their biographies, Dark Money and the Boys from Wichita, they hate government. They hate the VA because it works. You know what? It's kind of axiomatic. If the right wing is attacking it, it works. They don't attack things that don't work in government, in the public sector, because why? You know, they don't need to bother. The Koch brothers, all these hospitals, down there and up there, right? They want the $73 billion plus pot of gold that the VA represents. The pharmaceutical industry hates the VA because they get to negotiate drug prices. Did anybody here get the new Hep C medication? A lot of veterans I know did, and they're cured. Well, you know, the VA was able to do that because it could negotiate the astronomical price to a slightly less astronomical price. And the pharmaceutical industry hates it. The ultra anti-democratic groups out there hate the VA because it's almost wall-to-wall union, and they hate unions. We're going to hear more about that. And right now, as we speak in Washington, they passed what's called the VA Mission Act of 2018. The mission of the Mission Act is to destroy the VA. And Secretary Wilkie, who says he's not for privatization, is setting standards of eligibility which will open the floodgates for veterans to go to choice, and it's going to eliminate the VA as a choice because every dollar that comes out of the VA, every dollar for private sector care comes out of the VA budget. In the past 4 years, the budget for private sector care in the VA has increased by 49%, and the budget for the VA care has increased by 9%. So what happens? They cut programs. Have you seen it? Have you seen cuts? I want to hear about them. We need to know about them. They're cutting programs. They're not hiring they're not filling something like 49,000 vacancies. They're screwing around the pension. They're taking union representation time away from shop stewards and so forth. And they're starving the VA. And then they've set up in this Mission Act an asset, a BRAC. It's like a base closing commission. They've set up a commission to look at underutilized facilities and close them. It's a setup. You send 60% of vets outside. You push them out, even if they don't want to go, regardless of what the care is like in the private sector. They push them out, and then they have underutilized facilities and programs, and then comes the BRAC Commission, and they go, oh my goodness, we have these underutilized facilities, what a surprise. Well, they made them underutilized and then they close them. Pretty soon, and I mean there are people out there who say to me, oh, they'll never do this. They can't get away with that. They'll never kill the VA. They're trying. And you can stop them. We can all stop them. You can call your congresspeople if you're a veteran. And even if they're on your side, don't be so sure. Gillibrand, is it Gillibrand or Gillibrand? She voted for the Mission Act and the Accountability Act. In my state, both senators voted for the Mission Act and the Accountability Act. You need to call them. You need to say to them, I want the VA to be my first choice. Fund it fully, staff it fully. Takes 5 minutes. And that includes looking up their phone numbers or emails. You have to call the people that you even think are on your side. Because even if they take the right stand, they have to know that people support them. Please, if you have a car, a computer, a bag, put this on. Use it, right? It starts conversations, right? And we need to have those conversations. I am going to stop now, but I want to say that I'm here, obviously, because I want you to buy my book, but I'm here more because this is a model of healthcare that we should all have. We should all have comprehensive, integrated, national, publicly funded healthcare. Veterans need a special system to treat their special needs. But we all need the kind of care that I've seen in the VA. We all need the research the VA provides to all Americans. Thank you, the VA, for my shingles vaccine. So I hope you will join us. Yes, there are problems. It's the biggest healthcare system in the country. How could there not be problems? It's a human system. How could there not be problems? The issue isn't are there problems. The issue is what happens when there are problems. And if you think there are problems in the VA, try the private sector. So thank you, and I hope I can answer your questions in question time.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You'll have more time to talk to and ask questions of Suzanne in just a little bit here. But let me call Kerry Tab. If you're ready to say a few words. Again, we're going to break it up and have some vets talk a little bit about their experience, and then later on, all of us can join in and talk some about your own experiences at the VA, positive and negative. So, Kerry?
Hello, everyone. As Skip said, my name is Kerry Tab, and I started using the VA in the Bronx. I started in year 2012, the summer 2012. Prior to that, I always received my health care at Bonnefier Hospital. Annual physical exams are very consistent, and when my employment position changed and it was time for my annual physical, it was like, oh, I don't have any medical insurance, but it was like, you're a veteran, go to the VA. So that's what I did. I went to the VA. Prior to that, I wasn't using the VA services because of the negative experiences that I had in the military. I was one of those that the phrase says, threw the baby out with the bathwater. So anything that resembled the military, I stayed away from. So I definitely meant avoiding the VA. But because it was time for my annual physical, I just mechanically went to the VA. However, once I entered into the gates of the VA in the Bronx, it was like a flashback. It was like, being in the military. It reminded me of the base. And from there, I went straight to the PTSD clinic. And that's where I continued to be getting my treatment there. But because for me, the services that the VA offered, it's almost like it's a sweet and a sour. It was a trigger, but because of that very trigger, it brought me face to face with the issues that I have been hiding from for so many years. And I'm going, I'm speaking about it now. Sometimes I'm holding back tears. And sometimes the floodgates come when I speak of it. Right now, I'm having a moment where I'm not crying, so I'm grateful for that. But that's what it did for me. And again, this was someone who was very consistent with primary health care, going to the facilities. But it's because the VA is specifically, because of what it's designed for, it's for veterans. Going there on the premises and seeing the other veterans, some in uniform, and because I know that it was set apart for veterans, unlike the other, hospital facilities. Sure, there may have been veterans there, because I was a veteran, I was in a civilian medical facility, but this is set apart specifically. So for it to be mixed with anything other, for it to be altered in any kind of way, it's going to water it down, if you understand what I mean by that phrase. It's going to alter it. And so the very thing that the entering into the gates of the VA, what it's doing for me therapeutically, psychologically, emotionally, the whole nine, just because by me going there, to make it privatized will take that away. And that is the best thing that has happened to me thus far. because it is what it is. Now, being there in the PTSD clinic and getting the other health-related services, because anything, we can't, if you don't work it out, it's going to come out one way or the other, and it manifests itself in a lot of physical ways as well as the psychological. So, that's what the VA means to me. So I'm definitely opposed to it being privatized because it's not going to meet my needs. And there's other veterans who are still staying away, from the VA for some of the reasons like I expressed that was, applied to me. And the only way for us to be able to get that first cure, that healing, is to be able to enter inside that gate, enter in those facilities for what it's designed for, veteran specific, not making it altered. Civilians have their health care, but there's so many things that's going on in the private sector, things that I'm aware of, personally as well as professionally. And without them even saying it, I could only imagine what they have in store for the VA from my experiences of dealing with the healthcare field for 20 plus years. So that's my testimony, and that's the help that I received at the VA.
Thank you so much, Claire. Jasper, you want to give us a few words? You can use that mic, or you can come up here, whichever you prefer.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jasper Craven. Thanks for having me. So I've been covering the VA as a journalist for a number of years now. I first sort of met up with Suzanne, about a year now? And as I'm sure you all know, Suzanne is the absolute expert. And the work that we do is chiefly focused on tracing the corporate influences that are trying to privatize the VA. For most of the VA's existence, policy surrounding the VA has been chiefly focused on helping the veteran. That is largely because the major congressional VSOs, they had a lot of sway, they had a huge membership base, they had staffs that were on the Hill constantly advocating for veterans. That is no longer the case. As many of you probably know, these older, more prominent veterans organizations are losing membership. The American Legion, on its 100th year, had to announce it was cutting 15% of its staff. And so as these membership-based organizations that listen to the veterans and advocate for them have stepped away from these policy fights, corporate forces have stepped in. Suzanne spoke about the Koch brothers. They run an organization called Concerned Veterans for America that really came on the scene in 2014 with the VA Phoenix scandal, as some of you probably have heard about. That was the first moment where you really saw this shift where privatization was floated as a legitimate proposal and passed through the Congress and signed into law. That law saw the first major shift into the community, created new pathways to the private sector. And CVA was fighting aggressively, both through lobbying as well as through major media buys, ad buys, targeting politicians. They were able to secure that law. Since then, major healthcare companies have hired lobbyists focused on veterans issues. If you look back even a few years ago, again, most veterans policy was a bipartisan affair that was focused on meeting the needs of veterans and enhancing the benefits that they deserve. Since then, you see CVS, you see all the major healthcare companies, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Anthem, even smaller rehab facilities, and folks selling untested PTSD treatments. All of these interests are stepping in, and they're looking for a piece of the pie. There's a lot of money. The VA is the second largest federal bureaucracy, and let's hope it stays that way. But they have been successful. Through a lot of money, these lobbyists are getting what they want, whether that's a carve-out, whether that's the ability to be a VA choice provider and have access to these veteran patients. We're seeing in just a few years a really major shift in how veterans are receiving care. So Suzanne and myself are trying to track that as best we can. As she mentioned, the VA Mission Act that passed, I guess it's around 6 months ago, maybe longer, is sort of the second step. The VA Choice Act was passed in 2014 as a temporary measure. This was supposed to be a Band-Aid that would allow lawmakers to do their work to actually strengthen the VA, to hire the necessary providers to ensure that wait times would go down. And some of that has been done. I mean, part of the problem with the press coverage around the VA is, you know, if an issue is identified in the press, oftentimes it is then remedied. You know, the VA certainly had an issue with overprescription of opioids. Since that, they have cut opioids drastically in just a number of years, leading the nation in opioid prescription rates. Wait times are down. The VA publicly posts wait times at every single hospital. You don't see that in the private sector. And so now, the VA Mission Act was passed under the promise that veterans would have the choice to look at the private sector, look at the VA, and see what was best. But so far as the rulemaking has moved forward, and we're still in the early process, we're seeing a lot of pushback from healthcare companies. They don't want to give the same sort of quality metrics that the VA does. They don't want to list wait times. They basically want to, you know, say that they are the better choice, that they can take care of the veteran in a way that the VA can't, and then take those veterans in. Another thing that private healthcare companies are fighting for now is the ability to give a second referral once a veteran's in. So essentially, if you're a veteran from the VA, you go to an appointment in the community. From there, private healthcare companies then want to basically keep you within that system. So they'll say, okay, let's do a referral. You should, you know, go to the ear, nose, and throat doctor, and they'll have that power. Cutting off the VA, they no longer will have a say in how your care is directed. So right now, this is playing out in sort of musty back rooms. You know, it's not sexy stuff, but it's really important. And you know, the veterans service organizations all supported this legislation, and they, I believe, are under the impression that the law will be implemented in such a way so that veterans are given the best choice and that the VA will be saved. Certainly we're not at the day where the VA is dead, but certainly depending on how these very intricate statutes are interpreted, you could see a huge uptick in the number of veterans who are given care in the private sector. I'm sure you all know this. There are many studies from nonpartisan bodies showing that veterans care on the whole is significantly better than private care. And so there are major ramifications for this. You know, veterans appreciate a set of doctors who understand their experiences, who have a patient population, who know how to ask the right questions, who have a National Center for PTSD constantly trying to find new and better ways to treat trauma. And so I thank you for having me here tonight. That's just a little bit about what I'm working on with Suzanne, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you all for showing up.
Just advise anybody, if he's not Jasper Craven, type his name on Google and look at his articles. Again, he's got a lot of wonderful things to say about the VA for us to understand, those of us who love the VA and so on. We're going to have questions a little bit later. We're going to go through our crowd up here. I'm going to have another vet, and then we're going to open it up to anybody else who'd like to join in. So Brian Matteries, you want to say a few words?
Yeah, hi. My name is Brian Matteries. I was in the U.S. Army. This fight didn't start this week, last week. It started quite a while ago. About 20 years ago, I was at a demonstration at the 23rd Street VA, helped organized by Mike Gould, who's sitting out there over there somewhere. And Mike and I were talking, and at that time the VA had started a new program where you had to register all over again. So of course I hadn't. So Mike says, well, go inside and do it. So I went in, and I filled out all the paperwork, and I'm talking to the guy, and I was working at the time. And he says, well, you got great health care. You know, I was working for New York City OTP. And you don't need this. And I said, well, what if I lose my job? And he goes, a few years later, the city decided to close OTP and I lost my job, along with my medical benefits. I wasn't old enough to qualify for Medicare, so unfortunately, I was one of the few vets who were still working for the company, so I turned to the VA. And having had bypass surgery, I think I needed health care. So I started going to the Northport VA, and I received pretty good care there. The cardiologist that I see actually probably trained half of the cardiologists on Long Island and was recommended to me by my private one. I've since had 2 separate operations. I had one, I managed to tear a tendon in my arm and something on my foot. And the care I've gotten, I think, is really good. The VA in Northport treats something like 130,000 vets on Long Island. And it's one of the larger ones. And that number is probably really low because there's an awful lot of vets on Long Island, like myself, hadn't registered, have other kind of health care, and didn't need to go. The hospital itself, the facilities is enormous. It's actually got a golf course and, for the patients to use. I don't even want to think how many buildings. And the staff is really dedicated. The problem with that place, it's underfunded like the rest of the VAs. Last winter I was going there for physical therapy, and they hardly had cleaned the roadways and parking lots, and even the staff. Some of the buildings are really falling apart, in plain English. And it's received a lot of notice in the papers over this stuff. All these 2-bit congressmen like Peter King and that other clown, they come out, they get their faces on TV, and nothing's done. They're trying, Schumer, I think, is trying to get more funding for the place, but more is needed. And we can't just stop, this is great tonight. I'm glad to see we got a tremendous turnout. But the fight doesn't stop here. It has to continue. And this is a really great first step. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. Let's see. James, are you ready? James Young, vet like all of us, and also works in the Brooklyn VA.
My name is James Young. I'm a 21-year Navy vet, was a Navy nurse, and I am the director of the Brooklyn NNU union there at the Brooklyn Hospital. I tell you, the stories we have, we really, can y'all hear me? So I want to just say my family is interesting. I got 2 brothers that was in the Army. I got 1 brother that was in the Air Force. I forgave him. And my stepdad was in the Marine. He was a Vietnam vet. So I'm going to talk a little bit about him for a second, just to say. About a year and a half ago, I went to go visit him. He lives in Orangeburg, South Carolina. So me and my wife, it was her birthday. We said, let's go down south. Let's pop in to see my dad. My mom was out of town. She had to take care of some other family emergency. And he suffered from Vietnam some respiratory issues and developed congestive heart failure. So we go into the house, and he's in the house, and go into the room, and he's on a BiPAP machine, and he wasn't looking good. And I was like, Dad, you all right? And then I had to go shake him, and I was like, wow, this is, I'm a nurse, so, first thing, everything went off. And I was like, Dad, you ain't looking good. We need to go to the emergency room. We got to go to the hospital. So he was using Columbia, South Carolina, VA hospital, but not often. He was like one of them vets like me. When I retired initially, I was like, I'm not going to the VA. I go to a regular doctor. So we went to the hospital. We got him admitted. Everything was fine. I got in contact with the VA hospital in Columbia. I said, listen, my dad ain't doing good. He's been in this hospital he's at now for about 3 times. It started maybe like in February, then April, then June. Here we are in August. I said, they're not fixing this problem. Can he come to y'all? I will drive him. Can he come? They said, we'll get in contact with you. Give us some numbers. I got some numbers for them. And then he got better. They sent him back home. Well, a week happened, and guess what? He went back into congestive heart failure. So I had to fly back. I was on vacation. I came home, had to fly right back to South Carolina. I said, we're going to South Carolina. We're going to the VA in Columbia. So we end up going there. He ended up needing dialysis. Not even dialysis. He needed the shunt, the fistula to start dialysis. And it was a real process. We almost lost him. So just to say now, he got the dialysis, he got everything he needed, he'd go to Columbia. They were nice enough. Now this is really good, because Orangeburg and Columbia is about an hour away. They set up a program to come drive and pick him up. They gave him his oxygen tanks. They gave him everything he needed once he opened up the door to go to the VA, which was really, really great. Now he's on oxygen no more. He's flying over the place, coming to see him in New York, helping with the Thanksgiving dinner. And he's back to my old dad. And I tell you, that VA, I go there with him some visits when I go home, and he loves it, and I love it. They park our car for us, and I'm telling you, the VA is really a good thing for me, for him. And it's sad to say, as a nurse and a union leader, It's sad to see that what they're trying to do to the VA, they're doing less staff at our facility. The equipment, it should be ashamed of themselves, some of the equipment that they use. The buildings, like he just said over there, they need work. And I hate to say it, some of them need to be probably torn down and rebuilt. I mean, and it's just sad to say that they're doing this deliberately. We know that they're doing it deliberately. I don't care what act, mission thing they signed, they're doing this deliberately so they can get privatization in there and take over the VA. They're trying to bust all the unions. They're taking all our union time away from us. They're just doing everything to just make it harder for us to serve us, me, you, us veterans, to give us a better chance, you know, to survive. And we all like the VA. You know, I love to see the groups come in. They ride up on the 15th floor. I talk with them in the morning. You're not going to get that. You're not going to get, I can't go home tonight because my family ain't picking me up. I tell you, my aunt was in the hospital in Brooklyn, off of DeKalb Avenue, and she was real sick. She was there for a couple days. They discharged her. They told me and my brother, if we don't come pick her up, she will be downstairs waiting for us in the lobby. They were checking her out. I said, I know that would never happen in the VA. We need to realize that it'll never happen in the VA. We need to make sure we go out there and fight, and I'd let you know that NNU, me as a nurse, as a veteran, my brothers, they're not here tonight, but we will be the front line. We will be fighting to save the VA from privatization. Thank you all again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Bill Donkey, you want to come on up here and say a few words? Another vet who uses the VA.
My experience with the VA began shortly after I left the Army and the service. I wanted to find out what happens to shrapnel when it stays in your body. What happens to the wounds that I had over a couple of years in Vietnam? So I visited the VA in Manhattan, and an elderly man who should have been enjoying retirement but was sitting in a big office invited me into his office and said, "What's the problem?" Talking not like a Princeton or Columbia doctor, but like a guy from 33rd and 3rd Avenue. And he gave me a short examination, checked out the areas where I got shrapnel into my body, and said, "Hey, come here, touch the back of my head. World War I." And he held it for all those years, for all those 50 or so years. Kept that piece of shrapnel in the back of his neck. And I was impressed by his toughness, but then again I said to myself, Jesus, this VA, it's grin and bear it. What do they do about health care? You're all right, get out of here. I decided not to join the VA at that time. Had a career working for myself on Staten Island, paying for health care. And one time I went to my private medical provider, and there was something in my throat that appeared as if it could be cancerous. And the doctor, the ENT specialist, said to me, "What are you doing here? You got the VA." And I went to the VA. There were 3 gray hairs, a few fellows, medical fellows, and a bunch of medical students, all there paying their attention to the thing in my throat. And I said, I don't believe this. From that short, tough New Yorker who told me, don't worry about your shrapnel, it'll be fine, to this type of treatment. I didn't believe it, but it kind of won me over. I didn't need the VA at that time. It proved to be non-cancerous and just a discoloration within my body that scared a couple of doctors. Later on, I found out that I had hypoxia through a pulmonary function test and testing of my blood gases. It took 3 years of testing, but finally it came out that I had a unique medical condition called alpha-1, antitrypsin enzyme deficiency, for which at the present time I'm being treated every week at the 23rd Street VA by a great team of nurses. And for you nurses in here, I salute each and every one of you. Because with all due respect to the doctors, you are the backbone of our medical system. Thank you. Folks, it was easy handing out the leaflets with Skip here, but the tough job is really in the real work of saving our VA. This is step number one, being here. Thank each and every one of you for coming out into the cold, for being able to sit in this room for these hours without taking a trip to the bathroom every 20 or 30 minutes, and listening to each and every one of us. We need this kind of unity and loyalty and commitment to each other, as my platoon enjoyed when I was in Vietnam. That experience, even though I hated the war, those guys in my platoon I will remember for the rest of my life. We need each other to make this VA, the medical system, the medical hospitals across this country, that they can and should be. But it takes each and every one of us having our backs, caring about each other, pushing a wheelchair when a buddy can't walk anymore. Let's make this the system for the rest of the country that we know every American should have. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Skip. Thank you, folks. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Gabriel, down the end there.
I am the legislative and political organizer for the American Federation of Government Employees here in the Northeast. So New York State and New York City is part of my jurisdiction, and we try to mobilize our membership around important political issues like VA privatization. The VA is one of our largest agencies in terms of our membership. So we try to, by advocating for our union members, we're also directly advocating for all of you. Because as you know, we need to have a workforce in the VA that is motivated to be there, that's getting paid well, that's getting raises, cost of living raises, which many federal employees don't get anymore. We need to have a workforce that, because in many ways, it is a labor of love. They're not in it for the money. So, as I said, so we try to fight every day for our membership and in turn fight for the care that you guys deserve on a regular basis. And we're on the front lines of fighting the VA Mission Act, because as Suzanne was saying, it really is a Trojan horse for privatization of the VA. And their biggest goal in many ways here in New York is to sell waterfront property like the Manhattan VA and turn it into condos so they can then sell it. And what they would prefer to have all you guys do is to go to little satellite facilities, satellite offices, and get crappy care, quite frankly, because they want to sell that property and turn it into expensive condos. And they want to do this everywhere, not just in New York, and that's why it's so important that we stop them before they have the chance to do that. Because what they're counting on is that we're not going to be paying attention. They're counting on people like us not coming together and talking about how great the VA is and how it shouldn't be privatized. They want to do this literally while we're sleeping. So we have to really stay vigilant. And I know, speaking from the union, we have to make sure that we continue to hold all members of Congress accountable, because they're the ones who are going to be voting on this. And it's unfortunate that so many members did vote in favor of the VA Mission Act. There are a lot of political reasons for that are a bit complicated, that have to do with election year politics this year. But hopefully now, we have a bit of a friendlier Congress next year. We can do more to put the brakes on what this administration is trying to do. I know that, for example, the administration issued 3 executive orders this year that really harmed our membership at the VA. And one of the goals of those executive orders is to basically encourage the people who are working there now, who are really public servants, to leave and say, we don't even want to work here anymore if we're going to have to deal with these kind of executive orders from the White House. But we were able to stop them because we sued them in federal court. Those are our rights as a union and as Americans to go to court. And we won. We won because We had the facts on our side. Now they're trying to fight us on the appeal and things of that nature, but they won't win. So, as I said, it's really important as a union that we stay strong. I know there are some AFGE members here in the audience, and it's really important that we continue to unite around these issues and make sure that there is no privatization. Because as I was saying, and as Suzanne was saying, it really is about appeasing these right-wing donors. People, not only the Koch brothers, but people like Grover Norquist, people like the guy in Illinois, I don't remember his name. Okay, but who is the one in the Midwest, the other one? In Illinois. Do you know? Well, I don't know. So there are a few, that's right? The Mercers, Rebecca Mercer, that's right, and her father. So there are a handful of kind of right-wing billionaires who want to privatize everything. And they're starting with the VA. This is kind of like an experiment for them. So unfortunately, if we don't do something, we're going to be the victims of this experiment. So we don't want that to happen. So what we have to do is to stay vigilant. They're saying, call your member of Congress, do letter writing, phone calls. Believe it or not, that's what gets attention. If the phone is ringing in these offices, a lot of these offices, they're sitting around not doing a whole lot all day. If you're continuing to call them, making them aware, they will remember you. And if you want even organized, go in, 4 or 5 of you at a time. Go into these different members of Congress's offices, speak with a member, or anytime you meet with a member, a record's made. They have to sit down, because I used to work for a member, for an elected official, and you sit down, and they sit down, they write your name, they take all your information, there's a paper record, and that's important when it comes to, making sure that they're aware of who you are. So all these things are really important, and as I said, going forward, I think the most important thing for us to do in the labor movement, and also for all of you to do, is just not to be fooled by the kind of language they're throwing at you, because we live in an age where language is so critical. When people think of the word private, it has a positive connotation to it. Private club, private parking space, things of that nature. It's positive, whereas when you think of public, you think of dirty. There's no status attached to the word public. So we're battling against that, and our opponents know this, and they're very clever with language. So they're going to continue to do this, and their target audience in many ways is the general public. And we have a journalist here. One of the unfortunate things I see about a lot of journalism, when they cover the VA, is they don't tell any of the positive stories. I know we have a lot of people, a lot of veterans here tonight, telling positive stories of their experience with the VA. Unfortunately, if you turn on the news, there's a lot of negative stories about how it's backed up, the workers are lazy, the union members are lazy, they don't do anything, and they say, well, what's the best thing to do? Privatization. So as I said, we really have to fight against that. So as I said, that's something we really need to be vigilant about in the next Congress as January comes around. I'm going to repeat it again. Do not just sit around. I know everyone here is active, but call those members. Go meet with staffers directly. Email, things of that nature. If you guys have a Facebook page, continue to organize events around social media. If you don't, and you have questions about that, Skip could reach out to me. I could guide you guys in terms of how to do things of that nature with technology, trying to get the word out using the web. It's just critically important that people know your story and what you have to say. So I talked for a bit. I'm going to stop now. But
thank you very much, Gabriel. And we look forward to working with you and AFGE. Let me get Joe Hirsch here to say a few words about his experience.
My name is Joe Hirsch, and I live in Jersey City, New Jersey. And I have visited and been attended to at the East Orange VA and at the in East Orange, New Jersey, and the Jersey City satellite office. My experience with the VA health system began in 2013 when a noted otolaryngologist suggested that I go to the VA for hearing aids because guess what? They would be free. And he quoted that at the New York Eye and Ear Infirmary here in Manhattan said that it would run me about $5,500 to $6,000. And so I took him. I went, and I took a hearing, an audiology test at the New York Eye and Ear Infirmary, and I took one at the VA, and actually both were real good. But the VA gave me my hearing aids, and the difference, I mean, it opened up a new factor in the world. I could actually hear. You know, they set me up on the computer, and the hearing aids, I had to lower them because it was way too loud. But the loss, I put a claim into the VA and was denied because I said that it was because of artillery in Vietnam. That was denied. The stupid thing I did was not appeal. However, I did get 20% when I acquired type 2 diabetes, and I claimed that it was because of Agent Orange, and something that has not been talked about tonight. Agent Orange, of course, was used in Vietnam. The consequences are incredibly horrible. It's an herbicide used basically against the people. Added to the Agent Orange was a chemical called dioxin, which caused birth defects, both in the Vietnamese people and in the veterans that have come home and passed, and the birth defects have passed on to their children in Vietnam and in here. And also, it lasts for 7 generations. Okay, I know it's all connected, believe me. But the treatment at the VA for people that have suffered, veterans who have suffered from the Agent Orange, it's an excellent treatment that they're getting, and I feel that the VA, you have to say, we have to save the VA, because it's a form of single payer type of health care. And that's exactly, I think most people in this room are for that. I've also been treated for other ailments at the VA, and all of it has been quite positive. And I also use doctors when it's convenient for me in Jersey City. But whenever I get, like, I don't want to, belittle it, but the East Orange is quite a schlep for me from Jersey City without a car. It really is. So I use a lot of private doctors now. But the VA experience, the hearing aids were really something. It's important that veterans be made aware of this, that they're free of charge. I thought I was going to get a bill for $5,000, but I did not. It's really a good thing. So save the VA, and this is a great step forward to getting it done. I'm so glad to see the House packed. It really is a great feeling.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. Is Barry Walters here? My eyesight's not so good. Barry, you want to come say a word? Barry's over at the Jersey City VA? No. He'll tell you where he's from.
I'm Barry Walters. I work at the Lions VA in New Jersey. Okay, so these guys were presented to me by Eugene Carroll. He's a coordinator at Cornell College, University, where I go to. So I don't like the things that I see about the VA, the negativity. A person died, there was a vet uncared for, homeless, long waits. But they don't tell you the positive things about the VA. The clerk behind the desk who works 47 clinics and has to answer 5 phone lines by themselves. Now, they talk about privatizing the VA, but actually the VA is saying, we're making it modern. We're modernizing the VA. We're not privatizing it, right? So you have the kiosks. I go work the kiosk. I have a problem working the kiosk, but the person that's working the 47 clinics answering 5 lines can't help me. So what do? Like the average vet, I go to the patient rep to report them. I need a cardiologist. Lyons doesn't have a cardiologist. So they send me to Veterans Choice. Veterans Choice takes 6 months to answer me about me seeing a cardiologist. I have to go and get my own cardiologist. All right. What they don't tell you is about the person behind the desk who gives a hug to the person that's a veteran who just found out they have terminal cancer. They don't tell you about the person behind the desk who gets up with a nurse and goes find a patient who has Alzheimer's and he's lost. They don't tell you about the nurses that helped me when my mother had cancer 3 years ago. I didn't know anything about immune therapy. Next thing I know, when I come back, I have a stack of papers like this on immune therapy. My mother is in remission now because of the VA. She's not even a vet. But we don't hear about this on the news. We don't hear about the good things on the news. All we hear about is the bad things. The person that's homeless that comes in and needs help, you have a nurse, you have a clerk, you have a doctor to meet them right there at the door. We don't hear about that. The person that's homeless, and I've seen it, come in hungry off the street. Another fellow vet, doctor, nurse, gives them food. We don't hear about that. So where are the positive stories for the VA? No, I'm talking about on the news, because we watch the news. All we hear about is the negative stuff. And every day I see the positive. Where is it? We got to spread the word that a lot of people are working. They're not just lazy.
We have to talk to our children.
You have to talk to your children. You have to talk to your congressmen. You have to talk to your senators.
Exactly. But talk to our children.
So the VA, like I said, helped my mother who's not a vet. They gave me information to go to her doctors with on the outside. And guess what they told me? We never heard of immune therapy. Well, I just got this information from the VA. Well, is your mother a vet? Does she want to go to the VA? No, I'm giving you the information from the VA to help my mother. I had to go through 5 doctors in order to find one that knew about immune therapy. On the outside. And he was a vet. Go figure. But these are the stories that we don't hear. So I just wanted to share, the people that work behind the desk, go up and thank them. Because every day you come in and every day you have to, the people behind the desk have to deal with the doctors, they have to deal with the nurses, they have to deal with the patients. So thank them. Thank all the workers that work there, even the people that work in the canteen. A lot of them don't want to stand behind a hot stove and cook, but because they're dedicated to the vets, they're doing it. So, on behalf of my fellow vets that work at the VA, please thank them.
Well, let me thank Barry right now. Thank you, as one vet who takes care of me. I thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And again, one thing to remember, and this is from reading Suzanne's book, 1/3 of all vets, or 1/3 of all employees at the VA are vets. So there are lots of vets like Barry who give us those services that we're so happy to receive.